there was quite a bit of disappointment this year. I'm really sad to say it ended up as a kidnappy, no mystery, yuck. I'm counting you down to Christmas. Hello lovely bookworms, I'm Esmay from Paradise Pages on Instagram and also on Twitter, and welcome to another December Dash video. This is also the first video of my Christmas countdown series, so it's going to be a little bit of both. As you know, Femke and I are uploading every single day of the month of December, and I am doing my Christmas countdown once again. I did that last year as well, and that is 8 days filled with videos up until the 24th, so I'm counting you down to Christmas, hence the Christmas tree. Also, yes, if you're wondering, I have a ring light. I got this from my parents and I am obsessed with it. It looks amazing and I finally feel like I no longer look dead because of all the shadows on my face because of the lack of light. And I'm just so excited to be able to film in front of my bookshelves without having to be afraid of, well, low natural light. That said, I am enthusiastic, but today we're doing something a little less enthusiastic. We're going to be talking about my least favorite books of 2020. I want to start with a disclaimer, and I want to say that if something is a favorite for you, doesn't necessarily mean it's a favorite for me, and I also am in no way saying that these books are bad. I'm just saying that they weren't for me, they weren't up my alley, or up my sleeve, I don't know, either or, and we're going to talk about them. I'm also going to mention why something wasn't up my sleeve. Also, some of these books on here I really didn't like, but some of them I was just disappointed by. I think there's actually a huge difference there because you can actually like something and be disappointed by it, but you can also just, in general, dislike something. So I'm going to go through this sort of randomly, and let's just get started. I think the first one was actually one that I've read fairly early on in the year. I think I've read this one in January, and that is a piece of poetry or poetry collection, and that is Yesterday I Was the Moon. I personally, well, I didn't like it, otherwise it wouldn't be in this video, but the reason why I didn't like this is, for one, there is no punctuation at all, or at least not that I remember. Oh, there's some punctuation, I see question mark, but there's a lack of punctuation, or at least I thought so. I had difficulty reading some of the sentences, and that's probably just poetical and just creative thought of the author, but that was something that I was struggling with. Also, the fact that there's barely any capitalization in this one. The I, as in I think or I do something, is not capitalized, and I can't handle that. I can't. I don't really like that, and I don't know, it just wasn't for me. Also, something that I really don't like is that this is, for example, what the pages look like. You have a huge illustration on this side and almost all of the pages, and then very little text. I think that for a book that, it was actually a gift, but in general, I think it also was very thin. There wasn't a lot in here, and especially with poetry, I just like a little bit more text. I want, I don't know, a little bit more text. So yeah, this wasn't for me. I wasn't a big fan of this book, and let's just move on. So next up was a book that actually disappointed me, and I am surprised by it because I have read books by this author before. I have read the Cassidy Blake series by her, so you probably know that I'm talking about V.E. Schwab, and I'm talking about This Savage Song by V.E. Schwab. I think this is the first book in the Monster Verity duology. I also have the second one on my shelf. It's actually right here. I haven't read that one yet, and I didn't really like it. I didn't expect that, and I think the reason why I didn't like it is because of the fact that it's urban fantasy. I'm not an urban fantasy fan at all, and in general I think that is one of my least favorite genres, apart from contemporary, because I also never read that. And I also couldn't really get into it in general. I didn't really like the main characters. I also didn't like how action-packed it was, which is weird because usually I like the fact that a book is action-packed, but this was action, no plot, if that makes sense. It was just, I don't think it was for me. I don't think it's a bad book because I would have loved this if I were a little bit younger. I just don't love it now. I'm not sure if I'm ever gonna read Our Dark Duet, but if I do, I would definitely reread this first, so I'm not sure. Maybe I can do a video on giving these a second chance. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this book. If you really loved it, maybe I'll give it a second chance, but for now, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Next up was one of the books that I've raged about, and by raged, I mean absolutely raged. I also had quite a bit of a ragey bit in one of the vlogs when I talked about this book, and that was a book that I was actually gifted, and that is The Pharmacist Wife by Vanessa Tate. I do want to say that I got this from Jessie, and Jessie gave it to me because she didn't really like it. I don't think she finished it either. I finished it. I went through all of it, all 390 pages. And I didn't like it at all. I have very, very strong feelings about this one. I think in general the thing that bothers me most about this book is that it lacks trigger warnings. There is different types of sexual assaults in this book, and I really don't like reading about that. I know that it's probably very important to read about, but I don't know. I just can't handle it. It doesn't go down well with me. Also, the fact that our main protagonist was just a beanbag. She just did everything her husband wanted up until a certain point. And it was just, it was so cringy to read. If you hear meowing, that's Luna, by the way. So basically our main protagonist is called Rebecca, and Rebecca basically at one point does everything that her husband does in sexual sense, and then when she starts enjoying something, that's when her husband doesn't want her, because he wants something to sort of force, and I just couldn't stand with it. I think this was also Victorian. Yeah, it's Victorian Edinburgh, and if I read about anything Victorian, I want soirees and how do you say it? Courtships, and men who are just scared of ankles, of seeing ankles, and not anybody who takes advantage of women. It was not for me. I love the cover, let me say that. I really didn't like the book. Yeah, I have very, very strong feelings about this one. If you want to know more about that, just shoot me a message. I would love to rage about this a little bit more. I really, really didn't like it, and I hope that I can unhaul this soon. So next up is the only book that I don't physically own, and that is The Woman in Cabin 10. I actually think that this isn't for me, and it was advertised wrong, because it was advertised as a sort of secluded murder mystery, and those are things that I love. By secluded murder mysteries, I mean, for example, And Then There Were None. People are on an island, people start dying, they have to figure out who did it, etc. This one didn't end up as a secluded murder mystery, but ended up as a kidnappy, no mystery, yuck. Yeah, was not for me. So next up was a book that was a huge disappointment, and also a book that was on my, I think, an anticipated read for this year, and that is Empress of All Seasons. I love the premise of this book. Basically, this is, I think, mostly about two people, but our main protagonist is Mari. Mari is a yokai. I'm just checking it now. Oh, it's actually three people. Mari, Taro, and Akira. I think, from what I remember, yeah, Akira was a character I really didn't like. He was just unnecessary, just to establish a love triangle, and I didn't like it. Our main protagonist, she was interesting. She was really interesting, but the thing that really disappointed me about this book is that I had expected a grand sort of reach for the kingdom, because the premise of this book is that you can sign up to become Empress, and to become Empress, you have to participate in a couple of trials that have to do with the seasons. So you have to go through different rooms where the seasons basically are out to get you, and as long as you come on top, you will be crowned Empress. I think that was the part that I was most excited by, and also the part of the book I really enjoyed, and that was, I would say, 50 pages in total, maybe 100? It was no more than 1/3 of the book, and it was just, there was so much promise for this book. I really was so excited to get into it, and there were so many things that I didn't like. All of the male characters, by the way, no, I didn't like them. The only one I did really like was Mari, and I think the ending as well, I didn't like the ending either. I think that if you will like something that is quick and easy, you might like this. Like I said, it's a disappointing read and not necessarily something I hated reading, but it was definitely a disappointment, and I would have loved more from this book and just different things. So we have 3 books left, and let's continue with one of the only DNFs for this year, I think, and that is not 3 Dark Crowns, but it is actually 2 Dark Fates, 2 Dark Reigns, the 3rd book in the series. I loved this one. So I love the premise of this book. Basically what this is about, it's about 3 queens, 3 triplets, and when they come of age, they have to battle each other, and then the one that wins is queen. I also really, really, really love the little poem that's in the beginning. I will read it to you guys. 3 dark queens are born in a glen, sweet little triplets will never be friends. 3 dark sisters, all fair to be seen, 2 to devour, and 1 to be queen. I love the premise of this, but the characters! We have 3 queens. We have Mirabella, who can do elemental magic or storm magic or something along those lines. Then we have Catherine, who is a poisoner, and then we have Arsinoe, who is a... what is it called? A naturalist. Basically, they have, well, an affinity with nature, and they have a familiar. And I loved the first book. I had issues with the second book. At that point, I already didn't really like the characters, or at least most of the characters. Some of them were still interesting. But the third book, I just couldn't get into it, and when it took me incredibly long to even read small bits of it, I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna DNF it. This is a disappointment, and I don't think I'm ever gonna pick up the series again. I love the first book, and I'm just gonna stick with that story and just pretend like everything is okay. I also, at this point, don't really mind what happens anymore, so I'm not that keen on knowing how it ends. Okay, so I have another book that was disappointing. I don't have the second book, I only have the first book, so I'm gonna hold that up, and that's Everless. I loved Everless, but the one that I didn't really like was Evermore. I'll put a photo of the book somewhere. Basically, from what I remember, this book is about a girl who has to go back to court, and she was there years and years and years ago, and there she basically figures out that things aren't as they should be. Also, something that I loved about this book is that basically the sort of money that they pay is time. So you pay people in time and not in gold or euros or dollars or anything else. You pay them in time. And I really, really liked that story aspect. I remember watching the movie In Time, I think it's called, with Justin Timberlake and Amanda Seyfried. I love that movie, and I also really, really loved the first book. But the second book, the sort of idea of time as currency is gone, or at least I don't remember it being there. It becomes a sort of hunt, almost, the second book, and the romance. Yeah, it was not for me. It was just not for me. So I don't think this duology, I love the first book, but if it's not really a nice ending, but just pretend it's a nice ending and then stop there, because I really didn't like the second book. I love the first book though. This one is great and I can definitely recommend it. Okay, so I have 1 book left on this list, and I think that this is also the most disappointing read of this year. I'm really sad to say, and that is The Candle and the Flame. I was so excited for this book. As you probably know, I am a desert vibe girl. I love desert vibe books, and this is exactly that. You would wonder then why I didn't like this, and there's multiple reasons. For one, I didn't like the way in which relationships were handled, and not in the sense that I didn't like the relationships in here, but the way in which people went about love, and I'm not talking about only sexual love, but also sisterly, family, friend, the love in general. Love is sort of seen as a weakness, and I really didn't like that. Also, love is, in this book, or at least from what I know, it is portrayed as, how do you call it, dangerous as well, and a liability, and I really, really didn't like it. Also, our main character, called Fatima, basically goes through a transformation, and I remember her every single step of the way going, yes, but this is this is now not me anymore. This is what I am. And it bothered me so much that I couldn't. I rolled my eyes at multiple times, and I really, really wanted to love this book because the premise of this is just so cool, and I would have loved it if those weren't in here. And also, the fact that this main character had to change in order to become powerful is something that I don't think I needed. I love strong, powerful women, and strong, powerful women are strong, powerful women in themselves. They don't have to change anything to become strong and powerful. So yeah, this was definitely a disappointment, which I'm really, really sad about because I think I actually said that this was a 5-star prediction. I'm sad. I'm just gonna stop talking about it. I'm gonna put it back on my shelves because it is beautiful. But I don't think I'm ever gonna read it again. So those were all of the books on my list of most disappointing for 2020. It was a bigger list than I thought it would be. I had quite a couple of books that were disappointing. I can't say there were too many books that I absolutely hated, so that was really good, but there was quite a bit of disappointment this year. Not just book-wise, also in general, because COVID. But anyway, I hope you still liked this video. Don't you worry, my favorite books for 2020 is also coming up, and that is going to be a long list. I've read a lot of new favorites, and I am so excited to share them with you. So yes, that's what we're doing soon. Hopefully you will also like that, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and press that little bell icon so that you get post notifications every single time that a December Dash or a Christmas Countdown video goes online, I have to say. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!